From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Jaime Hixson. Usually you see me here with my friend Hector Boza. Hector's actually at home right now, a little bit under the weather, but hopefully he will try and call us up and join us sometime within the hour. As you could probably tell, we have a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss, so we welcome you to contact us through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you miss any past shows, then check us out on our Facebook page, which is In the Bleachers. It's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Snapchat. We have reruns of past shows both on our Facebook page and on my personal YouTube page. So please feel free to check us out on either medium. As you know, the NFL playoffs began this past weekend with some really intriguing games. We had the Chiefs taking on the Titans, and we also had the Jaguars and the Bills in the AFC portion of the playoffs. This past Sunday was the first playoff game that Buffalo has participated in since the infamous Music City Miracle that took place in January 2000. And in the NFC, there was Falcons and Rams, followed by Saints and Panthers, all really, really good matchups. But the big story in the NFL overshadowed every single game that took place this weekend, and that's the fact that Jon Gruden, who spent the last maybe 7 years as a color commentator on Monday Night Football, is back in the NFL coaching the Raiders. He just agreed to terms on a 10-year contract worth $100 million. Now, keep this in mind. Bill Belichick has been coaching the Patriots for 18 years and has won 5 Super Bowls. And I don't think he makes anywhere near the kind of money or has anywhere near the kind of contract that Jon Gruden is going to be signing when he has his press conference tomorrow. So this just gives you an idea. And also the fact Jon Gruden, before he got fired, won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers and basically was given the cold shoulder by the first time around by the Raiders. His last coaching go-around with the Raiders just so happened to be the famous Tuck Rule game when the Raiders lost to the Patriots in overtime all those years ago. But now he is back in Oakland, and you consider Oakland has, I think, 2 or 3 years remaining of home games left in Oakland. So they're going to want to sell their fan base on something, anything that's going to attract more attention when they make their way to Las Vegas by the time the new decade rolls around. And if there was ever a time for them to really create some buzz, this is how you create buzz, by bringing back the guy who pretty much helped to solidify a lot of things in Oakland before he was unceremoniously dumped by the late Al Davis more than 15 years ago. So it's not like he's going to be creating a lot of rebuilding on the Raiders. I mean, he's got a really good quarterback in Derek Carr when he's healthy. Possibly he's going to have Marshawn Lynch to coach next season. And he's also got Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree in the slot starting next season. And you also consider the Raiders, even though they were a disappointment this past season, losing 10 games, when they had their 11 to 12 win season in 2016, they really got by on defense. And it was not just Derek Carr when he was healthy. The defense was really overshadowed a lot by Derek Carr's much improved play that year. So now that the Raiders have Jon Gruden back, look for them to really be a serious player in next season's playoff race. Now, as far as the other coaching gigs go, now that the Raiders' job has been taken, all that's left are the Giants, the Colts, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Chicago Bears left over to try and for potential candidates to try and interview for. Speaking of head coaches, there has been a little bit of controversy coming out of New England. The Patriots have not even played their first playoff game yet, and already they've created a media firestorm because of the potential feud that's going on between Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, and the owner, Robert Kraft. All of this got started when the Patriots traded Jimmy Garoppolo to the 49ers. Bill Belichick wanted to make Jimmy Garoppolo the heir apparent to Tom Brady as the starting quarterback. Tom Brady saw Jimmy Garoppolo as a big-time threat to his job security. Tom Brady wants to keep playing next year and beyond. He once said that he wanted to play until he was at between 45 and 48 years old, which is impossible in a physical sport like this. At the same time, no team should ever try and rest on their laurels. Bill Belichick was doing exactly what he was supposed to do, which is consider the future, yet at the same time, look to the present, specifically their hopes of defending their title and possibly winning a 6th ring, which would tie an NFL record for the most Super Bowls won by a franchise. And what happens? Bill Belichick suddenly starts exploring the possibility of trading Tom Brady. And then you have Robert Kraft. Robert Kraft has long been Tom Brady's biggest supporter. Robert Kraft made it loud and clear he was not letting Tom Brady go anywhere, whether he was going to retire, whether he was going to be traded, or whether he was going to be released. Tom Brady was going to be the Patriots' starting quarterback now and in the near future. And what happens? Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft have a sit-down about the future of the quarterback position, and Belichick made it loud and clear he is thinking towards the future because he is seeing something in Tom Brady's game that maybe should raise a red flag. Robert Kraft says no. Next thing you know, you have a disagreement. Belichick wants Tom Brady traded, as it turns out, and Robert Kraft said no. So what happens? Not only does Robert Kraft trade their other backup quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, to the Colts, Jimmy Garoppolo gets traded to the 49ers. And what happens? Jimmy Garoppolo starts 5 games at quarterback and wins each one of his starts. That makes Jimmy Garoppolo undefeated in 7 NFL starts with the 49ers and the Patriots. And where does this leave the Patriots right now? Still with Tom Brady at the top of his game because, let's face facts, Tom Brady keeps himself in terrific shape, and there's no denying that he could play as long as he wants, as is his prerogative. But at the same time, you never really know if a major injury is going to maybe cut his career short. Ergo, the introduction of Tom Brady's personal trainer, Alex Guerrero. Alex Guerrero has been getting a lot of leeway inside the Patriots locker room so he could train Tom Brady and work out with Tom Brady. And what happens? Alex Guerrero suddenly starts looking at other members of the Patriots and tries to convince them to participate in his kind of workouts. And then players start going over to Bill Belichick, and they're asking if it's mandatory for these guys to work with Alex Guerrero in training. This only creates even more tension. It was obvious that Bill Belichick did not want this personal trainer of Brady's in the locker room anymore, so he wound up cutting off Alex Guerrero of any more opportunities in the Patriots locker room, which means now Tom Brady has to work out on his own with Alex Guerrero just to try and polish his game anymore, if it needs any more polishing after 5 championships and a possible 6th. And what happens? The media starts coming up with all these stories that there is a potential feud going on between Brady, his biggest supporter, Robert Kraft, and his longtime sideline boss, Bill Belichick. There's something that I learned about Bill Belichick a little while ago. It was from watching Colin Cowherd's talk show on Fox Sports 1. He dived into the mindset of what makes Bill Belichick the type of coach and the type of individual that he is. He says Bill Belichick is someone who has a lot of respect for history. He is also someone who is a strict disciplinarian. He's the son of a Navy man, grew up in Annapolis, Maryland, where the Navy's main base is. His father was a very successful head coach, and he wound up learning from his father all the nuances and how to run a tight ship in the locker room. That's number one. Number two, Bill Belichick is a guy who likes to hold grudges. When the Cleveland Browns, the original Cleveland Browns, wound up firing him over 20 years ago, Bill Belichick held a grudge against Art Modell and the franchise. When Bill Belichick was coaching the Patriots into his 7th season, he specifically told Eric Mangini, don't take the Jets job because it is a dead-end job. And what happens? Eric Mangini takes the Jets job. He only lasts 3 years on the job. And then he gets fired, and he winds up in Cleveland, where the situation does not get any better for him. And what happens? Bill Belichick and Eric Mangini never spoke to each other again, except for the traditional handshake after the game, which was really, really icy at best between the two. Now that this thing with Robert Kraft and Tom Brady has really boiled over, you know Bill Belichick is going to have a lot of ill will towards his boss. And already there are rumors that Bill Belichick may want out of New England. So, dare I say the Giants should probably take a big gamble and interview Bill Belichick in the event that he decides to leave, or in the event that Robert Kraft decides to suddenly fire him. There's also the issue of Belichick's top assistants, Matt Patricia, who's his defensive coordinator, and Josh McDaniels, who's his offensive coordinator, and had a rather short run as head coach of the Broncos many years ago. I don't think Josh McDaniels should be judged on account of maybe 28 to 30 games. At the same time, you wonder what kind of philosophy he's going to be able to bring to a new team, whether it's the Giants or the Colts or the Arizona Cardinals or someplace else where there's an opening. Right now, it's the Giants, Colts, and Cardinals that have openings going, and also the Detroit Lions, because the Lions just fired Jim Caldwell, and it was about time. Bruce Arians wound up retiring from his job running the Cardinals, and the Colts fired Chuck Pagano. Now, you look at each situation that's going on, you wonder exactly where is the best place for a potential head coach to run his own show. You look at the Giants have supreme ownership with the Maras and the Tisches. On the Colts, you have a really great quarterback, Andrew Luck, but rather shaky ownership because the Irsays have not necessarily been well-liked around the NFL. You also have the Lions, who have decent ownership but has zero clue how to run a football team. And then there's the Cardinals, another franchise with traditionally incompetent ownership. And also you have to consider, not only did Matt Leinart, I was about to say, the quarterback for the Cardinals. Not only did the quarterback for the Cardinals just recently retire, Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer finally retired after 15 years. Not only did Carson Palmer retire, but there's a strong possibility Larry Fitzgerald might retire. Maybe Adrian Peterson, who played about 5 or 6 games before getting hurt, he might retire as well. So you're walking into an ownership in the desert where there may be a rebuilding job that has to be done. At this rate, the Giants' job is a much better job to take because not only is ownership great, there's also Eli Manning, whose status is 50-50 at the point, at this rate, and there's also the luxury of having a really high draft pick. The Giants are going to be picking second in the draft in April, and we just found out Josh Rosen of UCLA, Lamar Jackson of Louisville, and Sam Darnold of USC all declared for the draft. So you're going to have a really attractive class among the first, I'd say, 4 or 5 picks or so, because there's still a lot of really talented kids that have already declared that are going to be making their way into the draft. There's also Josh Allen out of Wyoming. He's declared for the draft. So let's see exactly what happens when the draft takes place in April. So, as far as the Jets are concerned, the Jets ended the season with a 4-game losing streak. Yet somehow they managed to give Todd Bowles, who was going into his lame duck season, a contract extension into 2020. You could look at this in either one of 2 ways. One, there was talk that maybe he might have lost the locker room. Whether that's true or not, who really knows? 2, a lot of people thought that the Jets would win 1 game this year. For about 12 to 13 weeks, he had the Jets playing really hard. I mean, there were times when they did not belong in the same stadium as their opponents, but somehow the Jets really kept things loose and were able to play hard, even in spite of the roster that they had. And there is a lot to look at on this roster. At least they have the luxury of a respectable draft pick. They're going to be picking number 6. And right now, the Jets have a lot to choose from. They need to get a quarterback. They need to get stability at running back. They need a number 1 receiver. I think they could use a lot of help on the line. Defensively wise, I think they could probably go for some help to support Jamal Adams, who I think was one of their best defensive players this year, along with Leonard Williams and Darren Lee. Excuse me. At the same time, there's the issue of the general manager. Is Mike Maccagnan going to be on his way out? Because he was the guy that wound up giving this contract extension to Todd Bowles. Or is Maccagnan going to be given one more chance? We're just going to have to wait and see right now. As far as what else is going on around the NFL, you already heard that there have been some retirements. There have also been some promotions taking place as far as coaching vacancies is concerned. But right now, this whole drama of what's going on with the Patriots has really taken center stage. Leave it to the Patriots to create all the buzz without even so much as stepping on the field for a game. But it is what it is, so we're just going to have to wait until next weekend to see how long their playoff run is going to be, and also whether winning a 6th title is going to be able to stem the tide a little bit of all this controversy. As far as what's going on in the college bowl games, well, we now know that a national champion is going to be decided tonight, and it's going to be an all-Southeastern Conference matchup. It's going to be Alabama and Georgia. And when you think about it, can you really look at it any other way? Georgia really surprised a lot of people, especially defensively, the way they were able to bottle up Oklahoma's quarterback Baker Mayfield, the now Heisman Trophy winner. And this only reiterates the theory that maybe Baker Mayfield just is not cut out to be an NFL quarterback after all. He's a senior now, so naturally he's going to have to be considered for a potential number one pick. But at the same time, there were just way too many holes in his game that lead me to believe maybe he's just not the guy to try and spend a number one pick on. He's very unathletic. He's slow. He's stocky. Mechanics-wise, he's pretty solid. I mean, he can make the throws. It's just a matter of whether he can escape out of the pocket quickly enough to try and dodge defenders. And Georgia did a really good job of making the line collapse so they can try and get to him. Now, at the same time, you look at what Alabama did to Clemson, the defending national champion. Alabama just showed that they are still the cream of the crop in the Southeastern Conference, in spite of them not winning the championship game, the Southeastern Conference championship game, that is. This is why I still like Alabama to win not only this game, but the national title in general. Alabama has way too much quickness and speed at the skill positions, and Jalen Hurts has become much better at quarterback than people give him credit for. He's got youth on his side. I think this is his freshman or his sophomore season, so he's got so much more room to grow as a potential quarterback. The one thing that really irks me is what Nick Saban had to say after the game, complaining that he and his team do not have enough time to prepare for tonight's game. Bill Belichick, let me start over again. Nick Saban and his club had almost one whole month between their last game, which was the Auburn game, and the Clemson game. A whole month. They also had a week to prepare for each and every game that they suited up for this year. I didn't hear Nick Saban complaining about not having enough time to prepare for a game then. Now he decides that he wants to try and stir up a little trouble with the NCAA by letting his club have more than 1 week to suit up for a game. It is what it is. Every team in the NFL or college or high school for that matter, they always have 1 week to prepare for a particular game. And it's also a really short season. I mean, Saban only has, this is just the 14th game that his team is going to be playing this season. The NFL is a 16-game season, and they have a luxury of a bye week. The college kids have the luxury of a bye week, too. No rhyme or reason for him to be complaining why his team does not have enough time to suit up for a really important game. So you can take that for what it's worth, but he had ample time to prepare between Auburn and Clemson. As far as the other games that wound up taking place, they had 40 bowl games that were played in December and January. I'd say 35 of which were played in front of three-quarters empty stadiums. If this doesn't show you that they really need to do away with all of these unnecessary bowl games and just expand the national championship playoff picture, then I don't know what does. I mean, they played in front of 25,000 fans during a bowl game in the Bahamas. If that doesn't say anything about these bowl games being unnecessary, then I don't know what does. The only bright side to this was not only the two national playoff games, but Ohio State and USC was a dominating performance by the Buckeyes as they wound up really bottling up Sam Darnold defensively. And it also goes to show you Ohio State can compete against the big boys after all. That was in the Rose Bowl. The Orange Bowl Wisconsin pretty much exposed Miami for what they are, and that's a paper champion. I mean, granted, they had a really solid season, winning their first 10 games, but then falling back to earth with a loud thud, losing their last 3. At least Miami has a really bright future ahead of them. Plus, they've got Mark Richt as their head coach, and he has done a really good job with them, turning the program around in the last couple of years. And what about Central Florida? Central Florida ended their season undefeated in 14 games, and it wound up getting Scott Frost, their head coach, a brand new job at his alma mater, which is Nebraska. So look for Scott Frost to really turn things around in Lincoln, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on that young man because not only is he a former Nebraska quarterback, he is also a really hot commodity as a future head coach down the road. So recruiting and getting a really qualified offensive and defensive staff is going to be critical for Nebraska to get back to the way things were all those years ago, specifically back in the national championship picture. So let's see what Scott Frost can do with in his homecoming. And also, they wound up having the Fiesta Bowl take place not too long ago, and the Fiesta Bowl wound up being a supreme game that took place not too long ago. So that's it for your football. As far as baseball is concerned, there are now 6 weeks remaining until pitchers and catchers report. And the Yankees continue to try and look for ways to make their team better. On the heels of making the Giancarlo Stanton trade and also re-signing CC Sabathia, word has it that they are really lusting after Manny Machado of the Orioles. They continue to kick the tires on the Orioles to see if there's any interest in making a potential deal. The Yankees have a plethora of prospects to try and make a deal for. Which also reminds me, the Yankees have one of the top 5 farm systems in Major League Baseball right now. And you consider the plethora of prospects that they have going for them right now. Gleyber Torres, Miguel Andujar, who played 1 game for them this year and looked great at it. Tyler Wade, who's an infield prospect. Chance Adams, who right now is the best pitching prospect. Justice Sheffield, a really good-looking pitching prospect who's now an A-ball right now. That is just a little bit of what the Yankees have in their farm system. They can either use 1 or 2 of those guys to make a really big deal for somebody like Machado, or they could probably use one of those guys to plug in some holes immediately on the infield. Because when you think about it, the Yankees are all but set in the outfield. They're going to have Brett Gardner, possibly Aaron Hicks, and Aaron Judge playing the outfield. Maybe they can interchange Aaron Judge with Giancarlo Stanton between right field and designated hitter. Maybe they could have Judge and Stanton in the same outfield. Maybe one of them moves over to center. Who knows? Or maybe one of them moves over to left field. There's still the issue of what to do with the excess storage that they have in the outfield. Because the Yankees also traded away Chase Headley to get Jabari Blash to help out in the outfield. So now the Yankees are, I would say, 6 deep or maybe 7 deep in the outfield, which means the Yankees are going to try and have to make a deal to lessen their load in the outfield now. I've been hearing a lot of Jacoby Ellsbury trade rumors. Somebody is going to have to pick up all of that money that's owed to Ellsbury because he's got a ton of money left over. He's got at least $60 million left over the next 3 years. Maybe they'll trade away Brett Gardner. Who knows? Or maybe they could cut a deal for Aaron Hicks, maybe. There's a lot of different options that they could try and take care of. There's also the matter of the infield. We already know Didi Gregorius is going to be the everyday shortstop. Greg Bird, if he can keep his good health in order, he's going to be the first baseman. There's the matter of second base and third base. Now that Starlin Castro is with the Marlins, do they plug in Ronald Torreyes? Do they plug in Gleyber Torres? Do they plug in Miguel Andujar? There's a lot to choose from. So, there's still another 6 weeks for the Yankees to play with. So there's plenty of time for them to try and make a deal. There's also the issue of the pitching staff. Now that CC Sabathia is signed, it's going to be him with Luis Severino, who was a revelation last year, and Masahiro Tanaka, who's going to be back for the next 2 or 3 years, and also Sonny Gray, who was a bit of a disappointment when he got traded to the Yankees. There's also the issue of who's going to be the fifth starter. Is it going to be Jordan Montgomery, or are they going to try and bring in somebody else to be that fifth starter? Or maybe they'll give Chance Adams a little bit of a shot. There's a lot for the Yankees to try and consider. Now, as far as the Mets are concerned, maybe the Mets haven't been resting on their laurels so much after all, because there has already been rumors about the Mets wanting to make a trade for Andrew McCutchen of the Pirates. Andrew McCutchen would give them so much credibility in the outfield right now. You put him in the outfield with Michael Conforto, who should be back healthy this season, and possibly either Juan Legares, who's also on the trade block, or somebody else. That would be a pretty solid outfield for the Mets. Conforto, McCutchen, and also Juan Legares. That's a pretty solid outfield that the Mets would be having for themselves. As far as what their infield is going to be, we have not seen any movement yet with what they're going to do with their infield, which means right now it's looking more and more like they're going to have Dominic Smith as the first baseman, maybe Ahmed Rosario as the shortstop, maybe David Wright. If he's back from his spinal stenosis, he'll play every day at third. There's so much for the Mets to consider right now. And also, what about the catching situation? Because one of their catchers has been hurt on and off for the majority of the season, and quite frankly, I'm not really sure if the Mets really want to be able to go that far with their catching platoon. And I'm talking about Travis d'Arnaud. Travis d'Arnaud has been a medical liability for them ever since the Mets tried to make him the everyday catcher. And quite frankly, I just don't know what's going to go on for them. Now, as far as the pitching staff is concerned, there is a whole lot to consider. All I know is Thor himself, Noah Syndergaard, has been busting his tail in the weight room and the exercise room, trying to get back on track and ready for the upcoming season. The same thing goes for Matt Harvey. I'm hearing that Matt Harvey has kept himself in really, really good shape, trying to get ready for this up-and-coming season. There's also been rumors maybe the Mets will bring back Bartolo Colon. You never know. And as far as the rest of the rotation, Steven Matz has been a little bit of a medical liability in his 2 years. Right now, the only sure thing is Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom has been busting his tail, carrying that staff all by himself. Speaking of the Mets, they were the host just recently for the NHL Winter Classic that took place at Citi Field. And it was a beautiful, beautiful atmosphere. They drew 40 to 45,000 fans for that game with the Sabres. And the best part about that whole thing was the Mets were the Rangers, that is, were able to win that game in overtime. Granted, they've slumped a little bit after that, but at the same time, it was New Year's Day was a great day to being a Ranger fan, especially attending a game at Citi Field. And for the record, it'll be 39 days until Met pitchers and catchers report for spring training. And quite frankly, I cannot wait. Another thing with the Mets is they actually gave a contract extension to the general manager, Sandy Alderson. And what does Sandy Alderson do? Not only does he bring in Anthony Swarzak as his top free agent prize, guess who was going to be making a return to Citi Field? Omar Minaya. The same Omar Minaya who got off to a pretty decent start as a general manager. So now Minaya is going to be Sandy Alderson's top assistant. And when you think about it, Minaya was also the one that brought in Matt Harvey and Jacob deGrom, and also made the deal to get R.A. Dickey. It was one of his last moves as general manager before he wound up being sent away with his walking papers. At the same time, the Mets just have not been able to conduct themselves like the big market team that they are, and it just makes every Met fan scratch their head as far as what this franchise is thinking. All I know is let's see what kind of philosophy they're going to come up with when spring training comes around in just over 4 weeks, in 5 weeks, yeah. Now, elsewhere going on in baseball, there's still a whole bunch of free agents that have to be considered for certain teams. At the same time, you have the rosters of the teams and whether they want to decide whether they want to go with a really old squad, a veteran squad, or if they want to build it with much younger players. Now, we mentioned before that the Mets did have a couple of options to try and plug in for next season. Possibly they're going to make Ahmed Rosario their shortstop. Possibly they'll make Dominic Smith their everyday first baseman. If you look at their farm system right now, baseball scouts have them listed as the second to worst baseball farm system in the game. But at the same time, it's not like they're completely devoid of prospects. They do have a couple of pitching prospects that they could go with down the road. One of which they used this past season, Chris Flexen. But right now, probably their top prospect is the pitcher that they drafted from Oregon, David Peterson. And there's also a couple of infield prospects to consider. Andre Jimenez, Mark Vientos, Peter Alonso, Tomas Nido, and another shortstop prospect, Luis Guillorme, who they could look at for down the road. And there's also another couple of pitching prospects as well. There's Thomas Zapuki, Marcos Molina, and Justin Dunn. So the system is there for the Mets to choose from. At the same time, it's probably best for the Mets to try and plug in some holes with some seasoned veterans. That way they could not have to try and replenish their farm system all over again. Whereas you look at the Yankees, look at every single name that's up there right now. Right now, the Yankees are ranked the third best farm system in baseball. And we already mentioned the suspects such as Gleyber Torres and Chance Adams and Justice Sheffield and Miguel Andujar. There's also guys like Estevan Florial, Domingo Acevedo, Albert Abreu, Fraser Perez, Nick Solak, and Tairo Estrada. A bunch of guys that they wound up either drafting or signing out of the international pool that they really are high on. it just goes to show you that after the year that they had last season, when the Yankees surprised everybody and went to the American League Championship Series, they have nowhere to go but up. And you consider that they have a new manager, Aaron Boone. He of the famous home run against the Red Sox all those years ago. The time for the Yankees to win is now. I'm just a little curious as to how they're going to be able to plug some of these holes in places where they still have needs. As far as everywhere else in the world of sports, the NBA has pretty much inched closer to the All-Star break. And there have been a lot of guys who have been in and out of the lineup because of injuries. Isaiah Thomas just returned from his hip injury, which required a major surgery. And so far, he's done pretty well for himself. There's also the matter of the Warriors. Even though Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and the other superstars have been battling some nagging injuries, Kevin Durant too, they still seem to come up with a big, big victory when they're supposed to. Just notice what happened this past Thursday, I should say, when the Warriors came from behind and basically wiped the floor with the Rockets in Houston. This just goes to show you the Warriors are still the cream of the crop, not just in the Western Conference, but the entire NBA. As far as the Celtics are concerned, Kyrie Irving has been in and out of the lineup because he's been hurt as well. Yet somehow, the Celtics seem to be one step ahead of the Cavaliers as far as Eastern Conference supremacy is concerned. Now, here in our neck of the woods, the Knicks continue to go up and down in big games. I mean, one moment they'll come up with a big victory against Oklahoma City, and then the next moment they'll lay a stinker against the Bulls twice, and then lay another stinker against a team like the Spurs. This just goes to show you that Kristaps Porzingis cannot do this whole thing by himself. He needs to have a secondary scorer in order to try and get by from one game to the next. And there continue to be rumors regarding Kyle O'Quinn, whether he's going to be traded or not. There's a real logjam on the front line, and somebody is going to have to go soon. Now, as far as the Brooklyn Nets are concerned, they are exactly who we thought they were at the start of the season. A team that's been rebuilding, coming up with a big win here or two, but at the same time out of their league against some of the contenders in this game. So this is where Brooklyn really has to look ahead to their future, in addition to trying to win as many games as possible this season. As far as the college game is concerned, unfortunately, St. John's has gotten off to a really rocky start in Big East Conference play. And you consider the fact that two of their best players have been hurt, excuse me, it's not making things any better for them. I mean, just recently, Shamori Pons wound up getting hurt, and he just recently got back. But the St. John's needs to be at full strength if they're going to try and make something of their season. As far as the rest of the college game, the number one ranked teams in the country are pretty much what I thought them to be. So let's see how things play out for the rest of this month and in February. February is where positioning for the NCAA tournament takes place. So it's just a matter of time before we see one of these schools really mount a serious run at a tournament appearance. Back to the NHL, we mentioned the Rangers. They wound up winning the Winter Classic, but then they fell back down to earth as they wound up going into their home game with the Chicago Blackhawks, and they wound up laying a stinker there. And then the Rangers had most recent games to try and right themselves. The Rangers had Arizona and then Vegas as part of a Western road trip, a weekend Western road trip. And then there's going to be 5 days off but before their next home game, which is the Islander game. As far as the Islanders are concerned, I mean, they haven't been totally terrible. I mean, they lost to Philly last Thursday, and then they had games with the Penguins and Devils. Overall, the Islanders have pretty much been teeter-tottering between 500. So let's see what the Islanders can do. There's also been a lot of rumors about Yaroslav Halak and how much longer they can go on with him as the everyday goalie. So let's see exactly what happens with the Isles there. The Devils, of course, they also came off a loss to Dallas this past Thursday and had the Islander game yesterday. Right now, the Devils have been okay, and they've been getting a respectable amount of work from the number 1 draft pick, Nico Hischier. But when you think about it, him being 19 years of age, he's got a lot of room to grow. So let's just see exactly how much longer Nico Hischier can be counted upon to be the everyday man. Now, as far as what's been going on in televised sports, just recently I saw a very, very, very tragic documentary about a well-known British soccer star. Justin Fashanu was his name. Justin Fashanu was a young Englishman of Nigerian descent who became a real budding soccer star in the UK. It turns out he also became the first player to receive a £1 million transfer in the British League, and he also became the first openly gay soccer player in the British soccer leagues. But his story basically read like a Greek tragedy. He was deserted by his father. Then he and his brother were left abandoned in an orphanage by their mother, and he pretty much lived the rest of his life as a very lonely and a very underappreciated young man. Turns out his brother John Fashanu wound up being a pretty decent soccer player in his own right, and when Justin wound up declaring his homosexuality, it really created a wedge in between the two brothers. Whereas Justin was John's protector when they were kids, they suddenly stopped speaking to each other. And as it turns out, Justin, after he declared his homosexuality, he wound up going back and forth in between the United States and Canada, that is, and the UK. And unfortunately, there were some rumors that Fashanu was involved in a rape of a 17-year-old boy in the Baltimore area and had also been ostracized by the Baltimore community because of his homosexuality. Unfortunately, Justin Fashanu wound up taking his own life at age 38 in London 20 years ago. This coming May is going to be the 20-year anniversary of his death. His passing left the soccer community stunned by what could have been. Justin also had a whole series of knee injuries that, quite frankly, he was not able to come back from. And because of that, and because of his childhood tragedy, and also the tragedy of his sudden passing, no one will ever know what might have been of Justin Fashanu. The name of the documentary was called Forbidden Games, the Justin Fashanu story. John, of course, created a lot of regret when he pretty much blamed Justin for trying to take in too much attention after declaring his homosexuality. Well, unfortunately, John made a lot of regrets, or had a lot of regret with how the way things between him and his brother ended. So much so that he was in tears at the end of that documentary. As far as other things going on in the world of sports right now, there's been a lot of talk in WWE about some of the comings and goings that have taken place in the business. We know that the Royal Rumble is going to be taking place at the end of the month. Well, there's also been some stuff going on in the international circuit, because just recently the promotion New Japan had this great card going for them. And one of the people that wound up participating in that card was Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho took on one of New Japan's biggest American stars right now, Kenny Omega, and they wrestled each other to a fantastic ending. It was for the IWGP United States Championship. Kenny Omega wound up winning the title with a pinfall, but everybody was just raving about that match in particular. I mean, there were twists and turns. There were so many great moments taking place in that match that nobody really knew how that was going to turn out. Having seen Kenny Omega for the first time, you can tell what WWE is missing, because Kenny Omega used to be NXT property, but then the company decided they did not know what to do with him, so he wound up being basically discarded, and he wound up in New Japan, and he's carved out a wonderful career for himself over there. And this just goes to show you how much WWE has dropped the ball when it comes to their young talent. Now I'm hearing rumors that maybe one of their divas, Bayley, of all people, could be on the way out, because they have not found a legitimate storyline for her either. If they discard her the way they just discarded Kenny Omega, first off, they're going to be losing a really big fan favorite, because Bayley has really grown a following among all of the fans in the company. And second, the athletic ability that she has is just plain tremendous. I mean, granted, her shoulder injury got her really sidetracked. See, that's one thing. It seems like any time a star suffers a potential injury, when they return, either we don't hear from them again, or they get used in these really goofy storylines, which pretty much turned me off from that promotion in the first place. So it's critical that WWE come up with some really valid storylines for their guys. And just recently, I saw that online that they had the 10 best WWE wrestlers for 2017. AJ Styles wound up taking the card at number 1. It was AJ Styles, Samoa Joe. There was also Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, who wound up making the top 10, while Roman Reigns and Cesaro were looked upon as honorable mentions. And who was the number 1 diva in WWE in 2017? Alexa Bliss. So she was right up there with girls like Paige and also Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks. So when you think about it, the roster is there with talent. They just got to be able to use some storylines correctly. While we're at it, maybe it's about time that they started to respect their wrestlers a little bit and give some of these guys who have never been given a fair shake as far as the title race is concerned, give them a shot at the title. Let's see somebody like Kofi Kingston get a shot at the title. Let's see somebody like, I don't know, Sami Zayn or Neville or anyone of that ilk try and get a shot at the title as well. Because there are some really proven guys that have paid their dues that have not gotten a fair shake in the title race yet. So let's see exactly what happens with the title race there. We have about 5 minutes left, so before we end things, it doesn't look like Hector is going to be calling in anytime soon, so we're going to see if we can try and fill up some time with some other stuff. Just recently, there was a lot of talk about the Ball family. LeVar Ball has pulled out his son, LiAngelo, and with his other brother, LaMelo, they have gone to Lithuania to start their pro careers. Now, we all know that Lonzo Ball is having a bit of a tough time his rookie season with the Lakers. And, of course, there's their father, LeVar, who's been basically getting all of the attention. You could take this for all it's worth, but at the same time, you don't pull your son out of school in the middle of his junior or senior year just to try and get him ready on the path to the pros, especially in Lithuania, where all he knows is his brother LiAngelo. He doesn't know the language. He doesn't know the culture. And after LiAngelo wound up having a tough time in China where he got busted for shoplifting and he wound up being kicked off of UCLA, the last thing they need is to be overseas again trying to rediscover their game. Between you and me, I think I might have had my fill of LeVar Ball already, because he's already done way too much damage to his youngest sons already. He's even got them thinking they might be Lakers by the year 2020. First off, there's no guarantee that the Lakers are even going to want anything to do with LeVar Ball anyway, because he's already opened up his mouth as it is. And as we speak, I just saw that the Yankees wound up getting some infield help because they wound up signing the ex-Brave J.C. Peterson to a minor league deal, which is a pretty interesting move right there. Now, as far as the Ball family is concerned, there was a time when LeVar was actually a pretty decent athlete. I mean, he was a two-sport athlete in football and basketball in high school. Then after starting out in junior college, he played a year at Washington State, then did 2 years of Division II ball, and then wound up playing a year of football in junior college, and then wound up getting a tryout with the Panthers and the Jets. But since then, ever since his three sons have been making their mark in basketball, he's just become one distraction after another. I'm wondering what his sons must be thinking of this whole thing, because you know how some kids are when it comes to their parents being overbearing and everything else. So with about 90 seconds left, I think I'm just going to bid you guys adieu right now. So I'm going to say thanks to you guys for watching. Also, thanks to Kenny Graham, who's on the other side of the glass. We certainly hope that you enjoyed the show tonight. So for Hector, who looks like he's on another one of his drunken stupors again, that's probably why he didn't even bother calling in. So for Hector, and of course for Kenny on the other side of the glass, and our dear friend Rosanna Robertson, who also makes her way on the other side of the glass at times, I'm Jamie. We hope to see you next time, everyone. Good night.